Okay. Good morning, everybody. How did you do on your homework assignment? How was it? Remember, Tom mentioned it, 1 Samuel 17. Did you try to practice some of the principles that we talked about in terms of how to interpret historical narrative? Who did that? Who did it? Okay, what did you come up with? Let's do this. What were the main characters? So who did you identify as main characters?
I just told you I had I did David and Goliath, obviously, but I thought Saul was kind of a sub-main character.
Okay.
That's just me. I thought he was more than flat, but he wasn't
Right.
fully flat. So that was
Saul may be what is often called a foil.
Okay.
We didn't get into that, but what did you come up with in terms of big idea or takeaway? Anything?
Well, for me, I saw 3 times or 4 times it says that David says that you should taunt the armies of the living God, since he has taunted the armies of the living God, whom you have taunted, he told the Philistines. That to me was, because I saw it repeated so many times, that David he didn't like that the Philistines were mocking his God, and he was going to stand up for his God and defend his name.
Okay,
so I needed David to do that.
Right. So what would you say would be like the big idea then of the?
Zealous for God's name.
Okay.
Something
All
like
right.
that.
Something along those lines. Good. Again, with narrative, there's no right answer that's written up in the sky. It's very fluid and I want to encourage you to keep working on interpreting Old Testament narratives. But this morning we're going to talk about how to interpret poetry, Old Testament poetry, and obviously we're talking primarily about the Psalms. But by the way, let me clarify something that a couple of people, I guess, what they brought up last week. Let me clarify my position on commentaries, okay? I'm not anti-commentary. I think that there is a role and a place for commentaries. Just as I believe there's a role and a place for aspirin. But I don't, the minute I get a headache, I don't go take 30 aspirin. Maybe that's a bad illustration. My point is there's a place for commentaries, but what I fear is we rush to them too quickly. I found, let me see, how, I thought I had it here. Anyway. Rats. Here's my point. First of all, commentaries are very expensive. And number 2 is, in order to do commentaries right, you don't just buy a whole series or one commentator. What you have to do, if you do appropriately, is whatever book you're studying, you should buy 3 or 4 very different commentators and compare what they're saying. Don't just pick your favorite one and then read what he says. But number 2 is stop reading what they say before you work through the text yourself. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying don't use a commentary. Work through it yourself. Don't cheat yourself of the joy and the discovery of biblical truths rightly understood through understanding the genre of the Bible. You discover it for yourself. And I would say the same thing for study Bibles. I'm going to be using a study Bible this morning. I'm not saying don't consult Bible study notes. What I'm saying is don't replace your own hard work with aids, whether it be commentaries or study notes. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify. I'm not anti-commentary. I'm not anti-teaching teachers. But do your own homework. That's all I'm saying. Okay, interpreting Old Testament poetry. It's important to remember there is no single universally agreed upon definition of poetry. How would you define poetry? It's hard, isn't it? So here's my definition that I formulated from my undergraduate years in English lit and my years in seminary and my interaction with Old Testament. What am I trying to say? Not I was going to say Old Testament prophets, professors. A form of literature. Poetry is a form of literature, a very unique, distinct form of literature that uses aesthetic. What's aesthetic? Senses, the senses, hearing, seeing, feeling, touching. Aesthetic, emotive. What's emotive? Emotions, to touch our emotions. And imaginative language to convey meaning and produce effect. So poetry uses emotive, aesthetic, imaginative language to convey a truth. And this is very key. Because an author uses poetry does not mean that there is not an objective truth that he is talking about. Okay? So I sometimes people view poetry as just kind of, William Wordsworth Longfellow's, musings about his inner thoughts. No, Old Testament poetry is a form of literature that conveys objective truth, but uses it using emotive, aesthetic, and imaginative language. That's what we're trying to say here. Instead of conveying data, facts, and figures, poetry conveys meaning, objective meaning, on a visceral level. Now, what does visceral mean? I gave you a footnote. Visceral is an instinctive, deep-seated emotional response rather than one based purely on the intellect. And this is why poetry is one of the most ignored and most misunderstood genres of literature in the Bible. Especially, I think, today. We live in a highly... by the way, we have outlines in the back. There's 2 sets, so grab one of each. We live in a highly technological age. We want data, facts, figures, and poetry of all genres. It's not as... prophetic literature is probably the most difficult to interpret, but it's really, especially how many interpret it, really cool. It's really cool because we got Cobra helicopters and we've got all kinds of weird stuff going on. Poetry kind of gets lost. Poetry is for like Dan Fogelberg, okay, and Lifetime's channel.
Hallmark channel.
Hallmark. What did I say?
You were right.
It is an instinctive, deep. It's to touch the emotions. It is not based on. It's an emotional impact, not just a purely intellectual one. Although it takes an intellectual approach too. It produces not information, but it is meant to produce an effect. It's to affect us. And again, poetry is probably the least read and most assuredly the most misinterpreted genre of literature in the Bible. So we want to look at how do we interpret poetry. Again, there's outlines in the back as well as the New Testament. Does the New Testament, number one, so how do we interpret poetry? The first starting point is, as will be prophetic and apocalyptic literature, does the New Testament expand or explain the poem or parts of the poem? If you take out that extra sheet. Now, Friday, book club. Mitch and I were talking in the kitchen, and he got me all excited about AI. By the way, I've always and I still do to a certain extent, AI, I think, is becoming a kind of Tower of Babel for our culture. But nevertheless, it does and can have some really cool uses. So you can blame or thank Mitch for turning me on to AI. This complete list of Psalms quoted in the New Testament is from AI. Yeah, what is it called? Chat GPT. GPT? Chat. So this was a complete list of the Psalms and where they are used in the New Testament. And isn't it interesting? What are the two Psalms that are quoted most? 69, Psalm 69, and Psalm 110, which is the most quoted in the New Testament. Anybody know what Psalm 110 is about? Starts with J, rhymes with Jesus. Jesus. Isn't that interesting? Not surprising, though. So that is just, I just, sometimes I know there's going to be listening to this video later on. They have no idea what I mean by this, but sometimes I just feel like Gomer Pyle when it comes to AI and stuff like that. I'm just Shazam, golly. But let's use it to our advantage, okay? All right. So the first thing you want to do is, does the New Testament expand on this? For instance, turn, if you will, to Psalm 16. And we're going to come back to Psalm 16 later. Psalm 16. By the way, one of the challenges of poetry and prophecy, prophetical books, is what is called the confusion of personal pronouns. Who's speaking? Who is he speaking about? Who is he speaking to? Oftentimes, those pronouns shift within the song, within the poem. The pronouns they shift, and it can create some confusion. So you have to be very careful. But Psalm 16. Verse 8, and we know that this is a Psalm of David. It's a miktam. We'll talk about that in coming weeks. It's a miktam of David. So David wrote this. So David is the author, but look at verse 8. I have set the Lord always before me. And Lord there is all capitals, meaning who? Yahweh. I have set the Lord always before me because he, who's he? Yahweh. You can participate in this. You're part of this. He is Yahweh, is at my right hand. I
shall not be moved.
Who's I?
David.
David. I shall not be shaken. Are you tracking with me here? Okay. Therefore my heart is glad. My heart, it's David. My heart is glad. My whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol. Who's my soul? David. In Psalm 16, he says, you, Yahweh, he's still talking to Yahweh, will not abandon my soul, David, to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. Who's he talking about? Stop. In this psalm, himself. See, this is like watching a movie and you know the end. You know, the original audience, would they have said Jesus? No. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence, Yahweh, there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Who is this about? It's about David and his relationship with the Lord. But isn't it interesting? Turn to Acts chapter 2. Man, I can't wait till my finger heals. I can't. Acts chapter 2, verse 25. Well, we'll start in 22. Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth. Here you go, Michael. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst. As you yourselves know, this Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. Who is Peter talking about? Starts with J, rhymes with Jesus. He's talking about Jesus, right? That means God raised him, Jesus, up, loosing the pains of death because it was not possible for him to be held by it. For David says concerning who?
Jesus.
Jesus, not himself. And what does he quote? Psalm 16, 8 through 11. The very verse we said was talking about himself. But who was he really talking about? You can say it starts with G, right? Jesus. So when you interpret Old Testament poetry, and for the sake of this morning, we'll just talk about Psalms. When you read a Psalm, before you begin interpreting, your first step of interpreting is this: does the New Testament address this Psalm? If so, how? Because we believe in progressive revelation, that God's message became clearer as time went on, and now, as Hebrews says, now we have the fullest revelation in Christ. Okay? So the first thing you want to do is, does the New Testament expand or does the New Testament explain the poem or the psalm that I am studying? Number two, is there a heading on the poem or the psalm? Let me show you what I mean by heading. Psalm 51, a very, very popular, well-known psalm. Psalm 51. Someone read Psalm 51. Let's do this. Someone start reading Psalm 51. Larry, would you start reading Psalm 51 for us? And then when I want you to stop. He didn't have his Bible. Okay. There we go.
Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion.
Okay, stop. Thank you, Larry. Did he read Psalm 51? Here's what's interesting, folks. If you look at Psalm 51, where does it start?
It starts with the
To the choir master. That whole section right there where it says, to the choir master, a psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet went to him, that's in the Old Testament text. That's not a publisher's note. The publisher's note is a big, bold, in mine says, create in me a clean heart, O God. That's not in the text. That's a publisher's note. But Psalm 51 begins with, to the choir master. That's part of Holy Writ. And it never gets preached. It never gets studied. And I didn't mean to pick on Larry, but I knew he can take it. In fact, many of our Psalms are, the versification is not completely different, but usually one or two verses off from the Hebrew text for this very reason. To the choir master, a psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet went to him after he had gone into Bathsheba. Do you think that might be important information to know in interpreting this psalm? Of course. Where would you want to go and read before you start interpreting Psalm 51? Go back to Samuel. 1 Samuel 11. Okay? So, that's what I mean. Is there a heading? Not a publisher's heading, but a heading to the poem itself. And you can just go through the Psalms and you can see. For Psalm 72, Psalm 72, it just simply says, of Solomon. That's in the Old Testament text. That's where Psalm 72 starts. Okay? All right. Enough of that. With that, with heading is, what book is this psalm in? Here's what I want you to do. Turn to Psalm chapter 1. There are 5 books of Psalms. And a lot of Christians have never noticed this before. If they have noticed it, they really don't know what it is. The Psalms are arranged into 5 books, which is interesting because the Pentateuch is arranged into how many books? 5. The book of Psalms is organized into 5 separate books. Okay, so before Psalm 1, what does your translation have?
Book of Psalms 1 through 41.
What does it say?
Book of Psalms.
Book 1.
Book 1. Does it say book 1?
Book 1.
Okay, then say it. Don't read out of scripture. Don't read. Revelation says, don't you be changing the word of God now. It says book 1 and then gives what chapters?
1 through 41.
1 through 41. Book 1, 1 through 41. These were, when the Psalms were compiled, they were compiled thematically, roughly thematically. Book 1, comprised of Psalm 1 through 41, have a overarching theme. These Psalms emphasize God's presence with his people. So that has a bearing on how you interpret Psalms 1 through 41. Any psalm within Psalm 1 through 41, your starting point is, broadly speaking, probably has something to do with God's presence with his people. Now, turn to Psalm 42. What do you see there? Book 2. And book 2 goes from Psalm 42 to 72. These Psalms focus on God's kingdom and our deliverance from enemies. God's kingdom and our deliverance from enemies. That's a broad theme. Now, not every single verse of every single psalm is going to have something to do with that, but broadly speaking, the thematically, Psalms 42 through 72 are dealing with God's kingdom and his deliverance from our enemies. Him delivering us from our enemies. Book 3, we don't have to turn there, Psalm 73 to 89, explores God's sovereignty and his sanctuary and national struggles. So book 3 is talking about really his sovereignty is expressed through the nation and their struggles. Book 4, again, your Psalms give you this. Psalm 90 to 106 talks about the eternal reign of God and offers hope in the midst of exile. This is a broad theme of these Psalms. And then finally, book 5, 107 to 150, these are just Psalms of hymns and praise and thanksgiving and celebration. Okay? So, when you approach poetry, when you approach the book of Psalms, you don't just go, I'm going to go to Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, and then go to a commentary and then read. No, first thing we want to do, what's the first thing we do when we going to interpret poetry? Go to the New Testament. Does the New Testament expand or explain? Number 2 is what?
Identify the type.
Yeah.
Oh no, is there a heading?
Is there a heading? This gives you the historical context. If there is an historical context, many, if not most of the Psalms do not grant a specific historical context, but this provides an historical context for the Psalm. Number 3 is what book is it in? Is it in book 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? What are the broad themes of those books? Those help narrow it in. Number 3, identify the type of psalm it is. And this is not exhaustive, but there are different kinds of psalms. The psalms of thanksgiving, as in Psalm 100. We don't have time to go through this, so you just write Psalm 100. Psalms of petition. What's petition? Asking for things. Psalm 54 is an example. Psalms of praise. A lot of them, yeah. Psalm 34. These are psalms you could read later. Here's the great thing. Psalms of lament. Psalm 3. It is often said that the Psalms, one of the great purposes of the Psalms is they give us voice for all of the emotions and experiences of life that we experience. And while many Christians want to try to suppress lament and sorrow, it seems because of poetry, because of the Psalms, God says, no, we need to give voice to those emotions. We don't hide them. We don't cover them up. We don't pretend they're not there. We give voice to them, to Him. When we are sorrowful, when we are hurting, when we are sad. Men, we don't suppress it. We don't pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. We give voice to those things. And Psalms help us do that. Poetry helps us do that. And again, because you like poetry does not mean, okay, you're Dan Fogelberg. I'm being recorded today, so I lament. Imprecatory. And what's imprecatory? Calling down God's wrath and curses. Most Christians have no idea this is in their Bible. On evil. Now, on Wednesday night, if you remember, we went through the Psalms. We talked about there are some guidelines for imprecatory prayer. We don't pray imprecatory prayer because we've been personally offended. Our neighbor who plays his music too loud, we don't call down the curses of God on him, even though we may be tempted to. When we look at the imprecatory Psalms of David, why did he pray these imprecatory prayers? Anybody know? Because God was being offended. Because Almighty God was being attacked. How dare they? It was never a personal offense. It was because of the offense that was bringing to Almighty God. But there is a role and a place for imprecatory prayers. We see it even in the Proverbs. May he die and another take his place. And that's a great prayer for election season.
Amen.
Okay, imprecatory. Messianic. What's messianic? Talking about the Messiah, Christ. So obviously Psalm 110. The most quoted psalm in the New Testament. Psalm 110. And it's about Jesus. Acrostic. Psalm 119 and 34. Acrostic poems. David was brilliant.
Yes.
If in fact Psalm 119 was written by him, I believe it was. They have stanzas, and each line in that stanza begins with successive words of the Hebrew alphabet. So the first 6 lines all begin with Aleph. The next 6 lines all begin with Beit. The next 6 lines all begin with Dalet, and so forth, through the entire Hebrew alphabet. Try doing that with an English alphabet, and have the poem make sense and be good. It's brilliant. These are called acrostic poems. And then these are not on your complaint. Psalms of complaint. Psalm 88 is a key psalm. It's the only psalm that doesn't end with resolution. Psalm 88, when you're really down and out, Psalm 88 is your psalm, because it ends just gloomy. Okay, so identify the type of psalm it is. If it's a psalm of thanksgiving, your interpretation and your takeaway from it is not going to be lament. That's not what the psalm is about. Okay, so identify the type of psalm it is. Identify who or what the imagery refers to. Again, we killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Psalm 16. Is he talking about Christ, or is he talking about David? Is David talking about himself, or is he talking about Christ? Is this poem, this psalm, talking about man, about God? Is it talking about conditions or circumstances, or combinations of all 3? So identify who this imagery refers to. Remember, the imagery oftentimes doesn't state the name necessarily, but is used emotively and with imaginative language, oftentimes to portray these people and circumstances. Recognize the particular imagery used. This is just samples. These are not exhaustive. Simile. What's a simile? Simile is a stated comparison of 2 things that resemble each other using the words like or as. As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul panteth after thee, O Lord. As the deer. So he's talking about a comparison. Okay? As the deer does this, I need to do this. Well, how does the deer do that? The deer is thirsty and drinks until he's satisfied, and so forth. A metaphor. A metaphor is a comparison in which one thing represents another. It's not the thing itself. Okay? It's important. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is not a literal shepherd. What does it mean when he says the Lord is my shepherd? He's using shepherd as a metaphor. Someone who leads, guides, protects, feeds, provides for. Who in their culture did all those things? Well, mommy, I guess. But a shepherd did. They understood that. Hyperbole. The use of intentional exaggeration to emphasize a point or quality. This is another one that is so misused and abused. Turn to Psalm 107, if you would. And what book is this psalm in? Book 5. Okay. So get used to doing that. And Psalm 107 talking about hymns of praise, thanksgiving, celebration. Book 5, 77:16. I'm sorry, 107. What did I say? 77. Oh, that's right. I'm jumping ahead. 107:26. Let's start at 23. Some went down to the sea in ships, doing business on the great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord, his wondrous works in the deep. For he commanded and raised the stormy wind, which he lifted up the waves of the sea. They, who's they? The waves of the sea. They mounted up to heaven. Did the waves go up into, the International Space Station? No, this is hyperbole to make a point. It's intentional exaggeration to make a point. The waves, which they mounted up to heaven, they went down to the depths. Their courage, so here we have personification, their courage melted away in their evil plight. They reeled and staggered like drunken men. We don't take this literally. Well, we take it literally in the sense of how it was intended. It was intended to make a point. An intentional exaggeration to make a point. Okay? Anthropomorphism. These are assigning an appropriate part of a person's body to God's being. So you can look at this later for the sake of time. Psalm 18:15, talking about the breath of his nostrils. Does God have a nose? God the Father have a nose? The answer is no. If you say yes, you're a Mormon and you need to exit. No, you need to stay here. We see the Bible talks about the hand of God. Does God the Father have a hand? No, this is an anthropomorph. This is a figure of speech. What does the hand represent? We say the hand of God. What did hand represent? Yeah, power, authority, control. It doesn't mean that God literally has a hand. We're going to look at this in minutes. Oh, golly. See, this is not designed for Sunday mornings. This is designed for the hand of God. Zoomorphism. What might this be? A literary device where God, sometimes man and other objects, is described using animal traits or imagery. Psalm 91, and then you can stay there because we're going to go through Psalm 91 just for a minute. Psalm 91. Verse 4. The psalmist says, he will cover you with his pinions. ESV has feathers. They're kind of the in feathers along the wings. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Does God have feathers and wings? No, he does not. Contrary to what your Mormon friend might tell you. God does not have... What's going on? This is poetry. This is a figure of speech that we call zoomorphism, where we attribute truths. Now these are communicating real truths about God using animal parts, animal traits, animal imagery to convey. What is the picture of Psalm 91 for? Protection. I've seen pictures of birds, mommy birds and their little baby birds, and they cover in rainstorm, take their wings and cover their little babies with their wings. What an emotive way of saying. How could he have said it if it wasn't poetry? God will protect you. Period. Is that true? Yes. But how different is God will cover you with his wings. You will abide in the shelter, the shade of the Almighty, where one is maybe more an image of from rain, the other is from the heat of the sun. What an evocative, visceral way of describing God's careful, loving protection of us. And then personification, the assigning of characteristics of human beings to lifeless objects. You can look at Psalm 77:16. And then finally, follow up to that, well, what feeling or concept does that imagery convey? An emotion, response, a truth, a promise. Biblical poetry is not allegory. You're not looking for this means that, this represents that. What you're looking for is what is the overall image, what is the overall truth or emotion that is trying to be conveyed. All right? Let me give you an example. I still have a few minutes. This is, my undergraduate degree is in English, particularly English Lit. So I spent a lot of time in Shakespeare. and particularly the histories. That was my love of history. And Shakespeare wrote innumerable sonnets that are often ignored, and most people don't even know about them. But I want to read Sonnet 29 from Shakespeare. And I can't read it as well as, what's her name? I don't have an English accent. Here we go. When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and this man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered, such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. How is this different than that? When I feel like an outcast, unlucky and ignored by everyone, I cry out silently, feeling like heaven doesn't hear me. I look at myself and feel bitter about my situation, wishing I had more hope, better looks, more friends, or the talents and opportunities that others seem to have. And I'm dissatisfied with what I have and who I am. But then almost unexpectedly, I think of you, capital Y, and that thought lifts my spirit like a bird rising at dawn and singing joyfully. Just remembering your love makes me feel rich. So rich that I wouldn't trade my life with anyone, not even kings. Now that's still pretty nice. But think of the emotion of when in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries. The depth of emotion, the depth of expression, this is what poetry brings. This is what David did. And David was a man's man, guys. We cannot neglect the poetic books of the Bible. Let's see here, I'm 3 minutes over. Give me a couple minutes. Turn back, if you would, to Psalm 91. And let's briefly look at how we might approach this. To give you an example, because I encourage you to pick a psalm this week and go through these steps and see what you come up with. Psalm 91. Does the New Testament address Psalm 91? Does it? Where, Debbie?
Matthew 4.
I'm guessing, but I think it's where.
Look at your sheet. Look at your sheet.
Matthew 4,
Matthew 4.
Matthew 4.
Yeah.
6.
Okay, Matthew 4, 6. Okay? So you want to go look at that. We're going to look at that in a minute, but you'd want to read that first. Okay, because Matthew 4, 6 is interesting. The context of Matthew 4, 6. Psalm 91. Is there a heading? No. So we don't have any obvious historical context. And it's in what book? 4? So you'd want to look at that. So now we want to look at the psalm itself, and we'll try to identify what it is. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is shield and buckler. Anybody notice anything right off the bat that is interesting about these 4 verses? There's a shift that takes place in the pronouns. Look at the pronouns. Where does 1 and 2, what are the pronouns in 1 and 2? I, first person. He who dwells, really it starts with third. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of Almighty. I will say to the Lord, so this is the psalmist, I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Then verse 3 says what? He will deliver you. So you need to pay attention to these shifts. You're not drawing any conclusions right now. You're just observing and recognizing. He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers. Under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is his shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand. This may be what? Hyperbole. Is he saying, literally 10,000, now this may be an allusion to war. 10,000 guys may be laying around you. You're going to be the only one standing. Is it literally 10,000? No, he's trying to create an image.
Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. It's how Democrats count. Because you've made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Who's the you? The person reading the psalm. The person who has put there, who are abiding in the shadow of the Almighty, those are the ones he will command his angels concerning to guard them in all their ways. Right? Psalm 91 is talking about he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High. That's the one he's talking about. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and adder, the young lion, the serpent you will trample underfoot, because he holds fast. Because he, now it shifts back to what? Third person. He holds fast to me in love. I will deliver him. Who's talking now? God, not the psalmist. I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy and show him my salvation. You will need at least a week to study the psalm. Don't be worried about how many psalms you read. It's better, I think, it's better to take one psalm, one poem, and take 1 to 2 weeks and just read it, study it, observe it, write things down. We're going to talk about that in a minute. What in the world is going on here in Psalm 91? As I have studied this now for almost 2 weeks, I'm seeing all different kinds of things. Number one, did anybody read Matthew 4 and how it's used in Matthew?
Yeah, I understand.
How is it used? Who quotes Psalm 91 in Matthew 4?
Satan.
The devil. Satan quotes Psalm 91, but did he quote it properly? No.
Never does.
But isn't it interesting? He knew it word for word. And he used it to tempt Christ with it. So, how would that help us interpret Psalm 91? How are we not to interpret Psalm 91?
The way the devil did.
Well, that nothing bad will ever happen to you. Because what happened to Christ?
Yeah.
Something bad.
Something pretty bad. Crucifixion. Now, something pretty good for us. And ultimately really good for him too. I mean, he fulfilled the Father's will. So, but do you see how that the New Testament, There are some promises in here talk about long life and the others are going to get COVID-19, but you won't. If we take poetry as data, facts, figures, we're going to misinterpret this verse like Satan did. Psalm 91 does not mean you're not going to have any trouble, or bad things aren't going to happen to you, or you're going to live to be 996. No, the question is, what does it mean? Well, this is where we take a psalm and we say, what is the overall impression? And what is the structure? What is the structure of the psalm? What's the overall? If right now we just, in a cursory reading, you would be able to spend every day for a week doing this. What's the cursory impression you get from Psalm 91? God cares about me, and He's going to what? He's going to protect me. And He's given me some great promises. Look at verse 14. Because He holds, what's the condition? And again, this is where I saw the condition. As He holds fast to me in love, and there are 6 I wills. I will deliver him. I will protect him. I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. He doesn't say, I'll keep you from all trouble. I will be with you in trouble. I will rescue him. I will honor him. And I will satisfy him with long life. Now, I can go through and try to dissect each one of those and say, well, that's not always true. Because, sometimes Christians die at the age of 30. Or sometimes, I got beat up or my house got broken. Whatever. Again, what's the impression? What's the truth that He wants to get across? Is that He's given us some very precious promises. Now, if we really want to nail those down, where do we go? To the New Testament. But Psalm 91 portrays God as a loving, caring Father who will protect us and who will provide for us. And if you came away with nothing other than that, you may not be able to answer, what does He mean by He will give His angels, He'll command His angels concerning to guard you in all your ways, and in their hands they will bear you up. This is figurative language. Because, well, one can maybe argue angels have hands. But do they physically grab me and carry me around? I don't know. These are images that you can debate, you can wrestle with. At this point, you might be tempted to do what? Run to your commentary. Too early. Too early. Read it, study it, pray about it. Read Matthew 4. Don't run for help too soon. Because otherwise you'll always be like an infant crawling. You'll never learn to walk on your own. Study it. And again, we don't have time. I came up with living in the shadow, life in the shadows. Abide in God's presence. The condition is to abide in God's presence. Rely on God's protection. And trust in God's promises. All from Psalm 91. But it didn't come just like that. I've been mulling this over, and I'm seeing different things all week. So here's your homework assignment. Last week it was 1 Samuel 17. Most of you didn't do it. You got an F. This week, what I want you to do is I want you to pick a psalm. And I want you to read it. I want you to interpret it based on what we've talked about this morning. And see if it doesn't help you. Come up with, what's the overall message? What's the overall theme of this psalm? Not to me, what's the overall theme of this psalm? Recognizing types of literature, imagery used, who the imagery refers to, what kind of psalm it is, and see if this doesn't help you bring more appreciation and more understanding from the Psalms and from poetry. Okay? All right, let's see if... I've got 6 more pages. Any comments, questions? Anything?
You could divide your
divide it, do it in 2 weeks, 2 Sundays, instead of all trying to cram everything.
Yeah.
We'd be able to.
I don't want to bore people. Okay. All right. Well, maybe we'll do that. We'll do that for prophecy then, because we need to do it for prophecy. Thank you. Ina just gave me permission. No, seriously, thank you. I appreciate that, because I feel like this is so academic that you get bored. Hopefully not, but I wish I could make it more exciting. But again, poetry. This is the beauty of the Bible. How many of you ever read the Quran? Is it okay if I say that?
Sure.
Okay. You can edit it out. That book that starts with historical narratives, stories. We have poetry. We have wisdom literature. We're not going to get into wisdom literature, like Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Wisdom literature. And then we have prophecy, prophetical books. And then that's just the Old Testament. New Testament, we have epistolary letters. We have letters, and we have prophetic and apocalyptic literature in the New Testament. We have poetry that's immersed throughout the New Testament letters. It's just the Bible is not just a textbook. It is a work of art. Literally, a work of literary art that should be appreciated for no other reason than that. But it's what we would expect from a creator God who created this universe with all of its diversity and beauty. We would expect him to produce a book that's just like his creation. Diverse, intricate, intelligent, beautiful. And that's exactly what we see in the Bible. And we need to love and appreciate it for those qualities as well. Not just give me the hard, raw data. So here's what I'm going to do. I want you to go get in touch with your Dan Fogelberg this week. Watch some Hallmark channel, okay? Get a cup of tea. Get a cup of tea. No offense to those of you that drink tea. And kind of get in touch with that inner Fogelberg and pick a psalm. No, seriously, pick a psalm. It would be a good one to pick. Psalm 139. Why don't we all study Psalm 139 this week and report back next Sunday? Psalm 139. Okay? See, we're tying in book club, which is going to be in next 2 weeks from now at Deborah's house at 6:30. Invite you all to come. Anything else on poetry? Again, it's a genre that most people either avoid or they just misinterpret. And you're not going to always get it right. It's hard, but that's okay. It's in the study that the value comes. So please, no commentaries this week. It's okay later on, but no commentaries this week. I want to see what you come up with for Psalm 139. All right? Okay. Thank you. You're dismissed. Have a blessed week.